Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today. It's called Clearing Trauma through BioDynamic Breathwork, practices for opening your heart, releasing fear, and finding emotional peace. My name is Stephen Dynett. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm delighted to be with you here learning from a teacher of breathwork who's really renowned internationally. And this is a particular subject that is near and dear to my own heart. When I was in my 20s, I went through the holotropic breathwork training, trained for and worked with people for about 10 years, and really saw miraculous healings by just working with the simple tool of the breath to clear, to open, to access non-ordinary states of consciousness. And it really is one of the things that is most available to us now. So breath is one of the most powerful tools to get us through, to open us up to spiritual resources. And Giten Tonkov is one of the really preeminent teachers and facilitators of breathwork internationally. He's the founder of BioDynamic Breathwork and the Trauma Release System. So we're really blessed to be with him here today. Welcome, Giten.
Thank you, Stephen. Pleasure to be here with you.
Well, let's start with a little bit with your backstory. I know we're going to have a chance to do some practices together, learn a lot of theory today. Also, we're going to have a brand new upcoming program with Giten as well. But let's start with a bit of what propelled you on this journey.
You know, I was always fascinated with the human body and how it works. And I became a massage therapist at the age 22 in the early 90s. And as I was a massage therapist in New York City, I was working with my clients daily. But what I was noticing that as I was working with the deep body work, still after a while, the tension would come back. So I was always trying to expand my field of knowledge to see what can support my clients to go deeper in releasing this chronic tension and pain. So in my first trip to India, I found myself at the Osho Meditation Resort in Pune, India. And that's where the first time I experienced breath work. And from the first moment, I knew this is for me. I fell in love. It blew my mind. And for the next 7 years, I took every possible breath course that I could find. And I had my teachers, my regular teachers, that I followed around the world for about 7 years. And periodically, I was returning to New York City and to work with my individual clients. And then I began to bring breath into my body work. So as I was working on the table or on the mat with my clients, I was asking them to breathe deeply, and I was bringing connected breath into it. So what I started to notice is that tension that was beginning to unlock because of the combination of body work and breath work was carrying emotional charge in it. So the deeper the tension, the more of the emotional expression would start to come up to the surface. And working with my clients, noticing these trapped emotions in the physical body, they became more and more evident that it became more and more evident to me that they are related to past traumatic events. Whether it's developmental trauma, something that happened in the process of growing up, or it's a shock trauma, it was producing this tension that was resulting in that chronic pain, that the tension means pain. So as I began to work more and more with that combination of body work and breath work, I noticed that the pain would not come back and the tension would not come back, or come back to a lot smaller degree than it was in the body before. So as I was experimenting with that, I started to gather small groups of people to work with. And that was a perfect playground for me to start to bring in different modalities together. So as biodynamic breathwork began to develop, I started to bring this golden combination of movement, breath, touch, and sound that produce this emotional expression, emotional release. And later I started to bring in the music and the meditation to support the conscious emotional expression. So the group space for me was creating this incredible environment where people were meeting beyond the conditioning, and they were meeting each other in the space of the heart, in the space of truly opening themselves for that meeting. And that was thanks to expressing their emotions, expressing themselves verbally and physically and through movement and the touch, of course. So that's how the biodynamic breath work and trauma release began to develop. And for the last 12 years, I've been traveling the world with some of my supporters that are the teachers that work with me, and sharing this work and evolving it and seeing how it works and bringing other elements into it to make it more and more fluid. And it's still not written in stone. It's something that I bring in new elements into all the time. As I see they work, they support each other. This is a very integrated modality, integrative modality, and that's how it developed.
Well, thanks for sharing that full story. So let's go into a little bit about what happens when trauma gets stored in the body. And I think it's important for people to know that trauma doesn't have to be just big things like a car accident or abuse, but there's a lot of micro traumas that get stored as well. So how is it the storage of our trauma, the holding of things from the past, gets caught up or wound up with the breath?
So trauma is not in the event. Trauma is in the nervous system. So that's the way the event impacted our system, is resulting in the tension that's released, in the energy that's released into the body but not expressed, resulting in the physical tension. So when we're going through a traumatic event, it impacts our breath directly. Breath and feeling is very closely connected. The moment we don't want to feel, we stop breathing. So if we are going through a series of small events like you just noticed, or we're going through one shock trauma, or it's developmental trauma that happened a long time ago, it impacts our breath in a way that we become numb, so we don't have to feel overwhelmed. And stopping our breath or interrupting our breathing or making our breathing more shallow creates that impact on the body that the tension begins to build. So during the traumatic event, the energy is released into the body, and if it gets the chance to complete itself, the fight or flight gets completed, there is no trauma. But if it gets interrupted, undirected, incomplete, it settles in the form of tension. So in addition to not being able to feel or shutting off feeling because it's overwhelming, the actual physical tension restricts the volume of breath. So the diaphragm becomes restricted, the rib cage becomes restricted, so the volume of breath lowers, and with that lowers our sensitivity. So that's how the breath is affected by trauma.
And then how does that then translate into tension patterns, eventually disease or other issues in the body?
So the way that the tension is distributed in the body, we look at it from the standpoint of developmental trauma. And that is a Reichian approach. Wilhelm Reich, who was body-oriented therapist from beginning of 20th century, so he discovered that the tension that we have that's in the body from the developmental trauma is distributed in the body in the 7 belts of tension. And these 7 belts of tension constrict the movement of the energy flow through our physical body. So when our energy flow does not circulate properly, it impacts our digestion, it impacts our blood circulation, our lymph flow. And if our energy is not moving, it creates problems later in life. So as I was saying earlier, if the energy is released into the body, for example, in the instance of fight or flight during the traumatic event. But this energy is not expressed. It settles as tension, and it becomes chronic tension if it's not taken care of. So any kind of physical tension interrupts the energetic flow, the cardiovascular flow, and of course, this impacts our body in a physical way. Later in life, if that's not taken care of, if it's not restored, it causes the disease.
Interesting. Well, that definitely makes the linkages really clear. So let's talk about these 7 belts. So where are the 7 belts, and how do we notice where are we particularly constricted, and then how do we work with that?
Yeah, so Reich discovered these 7 belts of tension, which actually correlate to the 7 chakras. I'm not so sure he was aware of the chakra system, maybe not, but it's very clear that the tension settles in the body in these 7 belts of tension. So the first one is ocular belt of tension, includes the eyes, the forehead, the top of the head, the back of the head. So if the trauma is stuck in the body, it causes us to have this tunnel vision. It reduces our peripheral vision. And in effect, it causes tension behind the back, in the back of the neck, in the occiput area. Then the belt lower is oral belt of tension. It includes the nose, the mouth, the ears, the tongue, and it has to do with our expression. And we all know, have been in the situation where we feel angry or frustrated and we don't allow ourselves to feel those emotions, or not allowing ourselves to express that. We get this buildup of tension in our jaw. So the lower belt of tension is cervical belt of tension. It includes the neck and the throat, and it has to do with expression and creativity. So if you look at the shape of our physical body, it has the shape of a bottle, and this is kind of a bottleneck. So when the energy begins to arise, it wants to flow up, and then it comes into this cervical inlet, and it kind of constricts. So the moment we want to stop ourselves feeling, we constrict our throat. We want to stop ourselves expressing, we constrict our throat. And that's why if it happens over and over again, ever since we're little children, we're running around making all this noise, and an adult comes in and tells us to shut up and sit down, right away the throat closes. So the chronic trauma around expression, shame around using your voice, creating the tension in the throat. Then going down into our shoulders and the heart and the chest area, this is thoracic belt of tension. So thoracic belt of tension includes the arms and the heart and the lungs, as well as the shoulders and the back. So, and in Chinese medicine, the heart meridian runs from the armpit down the arm and ends in the pinky. So the heart's energy actually runs through the arms. And this movement of reaching out is very much heart related. And we all have been hurt around our heart. We all have been not acknowledged in love, or just not receiving or sharing love that we want in the way that we want to. So it makes our heart close up. And we form this physical armoring, physical tension around our chest area. So with the work that we're doing with breath and movement, we begin to open that up, to soften the tension around the heart and the shoulders and the arms. Then moving lower, we have our diaphragmatic belt of tension, which includes our rib cage and the diaphragm, our major breathing muscle. And when the diaphragm works, it works in unison with all of the surrounding structures, the muscles that are between the ribs, the intercostals, the serratus muscles. So there's an apparatus, the breathing apparatus, that works together with the diaphragm, expanding and contracting. So when we are holding tension in this region, the energy cannot flow up into the heart. So we are actually controlling our emotional state by lowering the volume of breath, by controlling how much air we take in and how deeply we are breathing in and allowing the breathing out happen. So the diaphragm is also a dividing structure between the abdominal and the chest cavity. So it does control the movement of energy between the abdomen and the heart. And it controls actually the sexual impulses of flowing from the sex center all the way up into the heart. And moving lower, we have our abdominal belt of tension, which includes our abdomen, our kidneys, all the organs that are in our abdomen, as well as our lower back. So in this belt of tension, it's the one that is not actually protected by a hard shell. Like, for example, our brain is protected by a skull. Our rib cage protects our heart and lungs. But our abdominal area, it's a thin layer of muscle and skin. So we tend to control that area by keeping our abdomen tight. But if you relax your abdomen, it becomes kind of like a radar. We have what's called gut brain. And there's a direct communication between our brain and our gut. So with this work, we begin to relax that tension that we carry in the abdomen. And of course, this impacts all of the organs that are in it. And this creates relaxation for the diaphragm to press down into this abdominal cavity. Because if we're holding our abdomen muscles tight, we are restricting the movement of the diaphragm. There is no space for the diaphragm to move. And moving down, we have our pelvic belt of tension. And that includes our pelvis, our sex organs, our anus, and our legs and feet. So this is the lowest part of the body. It's kind of grounding part of the body that connects us to the earth. And of course, in general, in our society, we have a lot of repression around sexuality. And that comes from our societal condition, from a lot of strong religious conditioning that we've been exposed to for generations on end. So we are not allowing the sexual energy to move up to the heart. And this is actually what we're doing by working with the belts of tension, addressing them from the top down. We're creating space, relaxing this tension so the sexual energy can move up through all of these belts of tension and reach our heart and reach even higher, reach our throat, and result in expression and creativity, and come even higher into the third eye and result in deeper meditation. So the connection of all of the belts is very evident. So if we are working, let's say, with the belt of tension that includes the jaw and the throat, this will support the opening in our sacral region, in our pelvis. If we work with the eyes, this will support our belly and the diaphragm, going into more movement patterns, deeper movement patterns, more expanded movement. So it's kind of, we're clearing the pathway for energy to arise. We're removing everything that stops this clear flow of energy that in a way, as I mentioned earlier, you asked about it, Stephen, it's creating openings so we don't have to suffer from disease later in life. And a lot of disease has to do with repressed sexuality, with the closed heart, repressed expression.
Well, thank you for that really in-depth interview. That was really illuminating. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about now biodynamic breathwork and as a modality, and what's different from other forms of breathwork, and how to work with it in the context of these bands of tension that arise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the main difference between biodynamic breathwork and other breathworks is that biodynamic breathwork is focused on releasing trauma. And for that particular aspect, we need to stay completely embodied and present during the session. Other forms of breathwork, they're great in exploring other alternate states of consciousness. Biodynamic breathwork is focused in staying in the body and staying present to your physical experience as you're going through it. So therefore, we're using the main foundational principles of trauma work, which includes the felt sense, working with resource, tracking your sensations, by using the main 6 principles. So the first principle is deep connected breath. We use the breath to activate slightly activate the fight or flight response, which is stuck in the body from the past uncompleted fight or flight. It's been released into the body but not fully expressed. The breath is also used to resource. So it's used to stimulate as well as to bring our participants into the parasympathetic response, which is calming response. The breath has direct impact on how we feel, and to activate or to relax. The next element we use is the element of movement. So we use the movement to unlock, in combination with breath, the holding patterns in the body. And the movement that we use is unwinding, undulating movement of the spine, as well as the movement of the spinal wave. In this type of movement, it affects our deep core tension, all of the muscles and tissues surrounding our spine, especially psoas and all the erector spinae muscles that run along the spine and hold the deeper core tension. The next element we use is the element of touch. In the online work, it will be self-touch, and touch is also used to stimulate, to support opening of the tight tissues, to open up the fascia and muscular tension. And the touch can be used to resource, to bring just the very calming and discharging effect, and if the effect of safety. When we put our hands on ourselves, it gives us a sensation of safety and connection. Next element that we use is the element of sound. So we're vocalizing, we're toning, we're verbalizing to open up our expression in the throat. The sound impacts us directly. When we're making sounds, the vibration that comes from our own voice travels down our body. It spreads like ripples, and it impacts our tissues. In addition to that, we use music. So music is a very important component. It stimulates our emotions. And so the next element that we use is a conscious emotional expression. What happens in the traumatic events that we get overwhelmed with our emotions. We get overwhelmed with feelings, with sensations, and we tend to shut down. So with going through all these previous steps that I mentioned, we begin to open up the emotional body. So the tension that's stored in the body begins to unlock, and the emotional material that's stored in that tension starts to come up to the surface. So we are very carefully expressing these emotions, not to overstimulate, not to re-traumatize. And the last element is the element of meditation. So meditation is used to kind of bring together all of the experiences that we've gone through in the session. It gives us an opportunity to be aware of what happens with ourselves, to be aware of our breath, to be aware of our felt sense, of our emotions, of our feelings, of our physical body. And it gives us a perspective of non-judgmental awareness. That's in the state of meditation, that's where insights are manifesting. That's when we become clearly aware, not to the thought through the thought process, but just become aware of what happened in a single moment. It becomes clear. It's kind of a revelation about ourselves. So the combination of these 6 elements, together with the body awareness, with the use of felt sense, and of course the use of internal and external resource, that's kind of makes up the foundation of biodynamic breathwork.
Fantastic. Well, it's clearly a very sophisticated methodology that you've created here. So I know we want to make this an experiential time today, so it would be great to give people a practice that you can do to work with trauma in the body and help to start to free up these different areas as you've described.
Sure. I'd be very happy to guide a very short practice, and this practice that you can use at any time of the day or evening. So I want to invite you to sit up wherever you are sitting right now. Just sit up with your back straight and close your eyes and shift your attention to the place in your body where your breath is moving naturally without you directing it in any way. Notice, is your inhalation bigger or your exhalation tends to prolong itself? Just notice, what is your natural breathing like? How is it flowing? And as you're taking in the deeper breath, notice the movement that comes with the breath. I mentioned before that breath in itself is movement. Your lungs expanding, your chest expand with your breath. So notice that this movement is happening in your body. And now I invite you to breathe in through the nose very deeply and out through the mouth. And try to keep your inhalation and exhalation pretty much the same length. And we're also using the connected breath. So inhalation is a half a circle, exhalation is another half a circle, and this way it keeps flowing in a beautiful connected way. So there is no break between inhalation and exhalation. So breathing a little bit in a medium tempo, not too slow, not too fast. And when you're breathing in, you're fully inhaling in a matter of, let's say, 2 to 3 counts, and you exhale in a 2 to 3 counts. And continue to breathe into this place where the breath is moving naturally. And notice that with each inhalation, there's a little more expansion. You can even imagine a rubber ball expands with inhalation and come back to original shape when you exhale. So stay with a deep, full, connected breath, keeping flowing. Notice the movement that begins to arise, and very gently let's start to bring our spinal movement into our exploration. This very soft, undulating movement of the spine. It's kind of the movement is coming from the inside and radiating itself towards the periphery. So stay with that breath. And now I invite you to make the breath just slightly faster. Something like this. And keep going in this way for the next minute. And notice as your body begins to charge, the breath is charged. Breath begins to manifest a deeper amounts of energy in your body, larger amounts of energy. It begins to manifest the expansion of your energetic sensations. So stay with that breath. Keep allowing the movement. Drop into the letting go on and out breath, and keep allowing the spinal movement as you keep going. Stay with that. And let's go for another minute of deep, full breath this way. Let's bring the energy a little higher. Keep going. In, out, in, out, in, out. Keep dropping into letting go on each exhalation. And now begin to slow it all down. Shift your breath to flow in and out through your nose. Slow your breath. And now breathe in and make your out breath twice as long as your in breath. So breathe in on the count of 3, breathe out on the count of 6, and stay with that pattern for a while. And notice various body sensations that began to be activated in your body right now. How do you experience yourself? What's alive for you right now? Even for a short period of breathing in this way, notice what's happening for you. How do you feel it and experience it through your felt sense, through your physical sensations? Notice everything that's happening for you. Even such a short period of breath may already activate your emotional responses. Include that as part of your experience. Don't get stuck anywhere. Just stay connected. Stay in the slow breath. And by now, your whole system should have gone into a parasympathetic response, very gentle, calming breath. And now I invite you to put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly and connect these two places through your touch and your breath. Notice all the physical sensations that are present in these two places as well. Notice the space of expansion, the feeling of spaciousness in your body. If you can find that within yourself. And take another deep, full breath and open your eyes and scan the environment you're in right now. Look in your room where you're in. Look for places in the room that remind you of comfort and connection or safety. Maybe look at an object in your room that reminds you of safety or a good memory, and notice how that impacts you. And just once again, scan your entire physical body and notice what is the space right now for you. What are the physical sensations that are present? Maybe there's a feeling of calmness, aliveness, or activation of some sort. Include that as part of your experience.
Well, thank you for that exploration of the breath. I mean, it's amazing how much can start to move very quickly in terms of like opening up energies. And I appreciate that you were grounding us in the connection of heart and belly at the end too, since it can be a lot sometimes when people first start to open up energies with the breath work.
Yes, breath works extremely quickly. It doesn't take hardly any time to change the state you're in by just changing your breath, because of the very, very close connection of the emotions and the breath. Change your breath and your state will change quite quickly.
Let's talk about you brought our attention to the heart and connecting that to the belly. So I know that you had said earlier today that so many of us have ended up with different kinds of constriction around the heart field, and yet that's really at the center of so much of the spiritual life, is to live with an open heart. So just share a little bit more about insights into how we shut down our heart and how do we open it back up with breath.
Yes, I include that as part of our work in biodynamic breathwork. And looking at Alexander Lowen's formation of the personality structure, I borrowed that from him and include that in our work. So we're born wanting to reach out for pleasure. And when we're babies, we're constantly reaching out to our mothers. And this energy is coming from our heart. We want to be met in that heart, be met in pleasure. So when this reaching out is met with deprivation or punishment, it produces the feelings of anxiety in the body. And this anxiety stores in the form of tension. It produces actual physical chronic tension. So if you picture this kind of like a target image, that in the center it has a bullseye, and in the center is our core, it's our heart. And the heart's energy is love. This love always wants to flow. And the next circle around the heart is our emotional layer. And in the case of our emotions being restricted, of this feeling of wanting to reach out for pleasure, where it gets interrupted, it produces the sensation, the feelings of pain, fear, rage, and despair. And if you look on the next circle around the emotional layer, it's a muscular circle, muscular layer. And all of this results in a chronic muscular tension if it's not addressed. And the very superficial layer is the ego layer. This is the very superficial layer that we are relating with everyone around us. We kind of relate on the ego and personality layer. And the attributes of that is denial, distrust, projection, and rationalization. So when we begin to work with releasing tension in the muscular layer, it impacts the layer underneath, which is emotional layer, and it impacts the layer above, which is the ego layer. So the heart's impulse has the chance to pass through all of the layers that become softer to reach the ego layer. So when the heart's energy reaches the ego layer, we're able to start to relate to ourselves and to everyone around us in a different way. So the denial and projection and rationalizations become self-assertion, self-possession. Our energy from the heart, when it reaches the external layer, it impacts it in so many ways. So the softness that starts to happen in our physical tension, and it kind of becomes like a conductor. It becomes spongy. The energy reaches from the heart through all of these layers, impacting them on the way. That's the beauty of opening the heart. And no matter how long this energy has been interrupted, this energy of the heart, this desire to reach out for connection, for pleasure, and to share love, it never goes away. So it looks for opportunity. And when we give it an opportunity to reach to our ego, it takes it.
Beautiful, just so beautifully shared in terms of the heart energy and the effect on our whole system. I really appreciate that. Well, there's one other area that I realized we didn't cover as much, is just around the trauma releasing from our system and how you can track that and map that with physical sensations as well.
We as mammals are pretty much programmed in a very similar way to every other mammals to release trauma. So one of the major ways is tremoring, or in the way that trauma can be released besides tremoring, it could be changes in temperature, emotions. So there are many different physical sensations that begin to happen. Tingling, increased sensitivity where it was numbness previously. A lot of the times what happens in the biodynamic breathwork, it opens up the release of shock that's stuck in our nervous system through tremoring. And when we let go into this tremoring, that actually starts to shake up the foundation of the tension. It's kind of in a way like the earthquake. When it shakes the foundation, it shakes the ground, the building can crumble. So the tremoring that begins to release from our nervous system, from the shock that's been stuck. It supports the release of chronic tension that's held in the body. So this comes very often in the work that we do.
Fascinating. Well, Giten, clearly you are a master of this whole arena, and so we're really blessed to learn from you here today. And I also want to spend some time to talk about your upcoming program that we mentioned earlier. So there really couldn't be a better time to learn about how the breath can liberate you, so that we want to learn how this very simple access, this inheritance that everyone has of the breath, can be a tool for your liberation, and particularly for clearing stress and trauma from the body, things that are current, things that are from way back, so that we can really be clear and open and resilient and heart-centered moving forward. So the course that Giten is going to be teaching is called Release Trauma from the Body with BioDynamic Breathwork. Connect with your authentic being to liberate physical and emotional pain and experience peace. So it's a very experiential program, and you can find it at biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com. Again, biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com. There's no other punctuation, just straight across, biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com. This does not have any prerequisites, so it really is open to people who have never done any practices, to people who are very advanced with their different schools of breathwork, but that you can really find extra value and practices from Giten's very sophisticated system here. So Giten, I'd love for you to share about the journey you're going to be taking people on over the 7 weeks, and give a tour of some of the modules and practices you'll be doing as well.
Sure. The course is divided into 7 modules. We'll have 1 module per week. And in the first module, it will be kind of a general understanding of what the breath is, how it impacts us. We will have a first breath session to experiment with various ways of breathing and movement. We explore breathing into various belts of tension. And in the module 2, we'll start to work with the ocular belt of tension. Moving into module 3, we will work into oral and cervical belts of tension. We will explore how the tension in these 2 belts of tension is connected to our pelvic belt of tension through breath and movement and self-body work. In module 4, we will work with our thoracic belt of tension, exploring letting go of tension around our heart and lungs and opening up the armoring, dropping the armoring, dissolving and softening the armoring around our heart. In module 5, we will work with diaphragmatic and abdominal belts of tension, also through means of breath work, self-body work, and specific unwinding movement of that particular area. In module 6, we will work with pelvic belt of tension, also through the means of breath and movement and self-body work. We will also connect again the oral and cervical belt of tension with the pelvic belt of tension. And in the module 7, we will look at how our body opened up. We will go again through a general breath session involving all the belts of tension we have worked on previously, in combination with breath, movement, touch, bringing in the sounding, all the 6 elements of the biodynamic breath work. Breath, movement, touch, meditation, sound, emotional expression, all of that will be included.
Great. Well, it sounds like just a terrific program, and so valuable and really practical right now in terms of being able to have more tools to help us navigate this time we're in, and also to really just move forward in a more liberated way on the other side. So again, you can find the program laid out in detail at biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com, biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com. So a few things I'll draw your attention to. So not only do you get the live sessions with Giten, which includes experiential exercises, Q&A time, you get the practices, you also get recordings, both audio and video for every session, and word-for-word transcripts. You can go back and study them, you can highlight them. There's also going to be small group time to connect with other participants, as well as weekly exercises and practices for inquiry and action learning, and a Facebook community to deepen your connections. Now, these Facebook communities can get very rich in terms of the engagement globally, with people all over the world coming together to study and do these practices together. So it's really adds a lot of value to the community that gets created. There's also a number of extra bonuses that we're going to be featuring here, which you can see in more detail laid out on the page. There's a PDF excerpt from Giten's book, Feel to Heal, Releasing Trauma Through Body Awareness and Breathwork Practice. And it's called Using Your Felt Sense to Heal. There's also a video teaching from Giten called Tense, Release, Unwind. And I should mention there's also one extra bonus, or a very robust bonus, for those who sign up by midnight tonight. We like to do this to encourage you to make a decision now while you have the most information and most connection to what Giten is sharing, and therefore you can tell if it's really the right next step for you. And if you do sign up today, you get Fine-Tuning Your Nervous System. This is a video dialogue with Giten and Ariel Schwartz when you sign up by midnight tonight. So again, I encourage you to go to the URL at biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com and give it a read, tune in. And if this is the right next step for you, then you've got the extra bonus. Fine-Tuning Your Nervous System, a video dialogue with Giten and Ariel Schwartz when you sign up by midnight tonight. So, Giten, what a great time we've had together. Anything that you still have on your heart you want to share about the course, the program, and for folks who want to keep working with you and going further?
Sure. I love to share this work, and I want to invite everyone who wants to experience working with yourself, working with breath. I will show up for you 100%, and you will have a tremendous experience going deeper and deeper within yourself, unlocking and releasing tension. This work is so beautiful in opening up your heart, so beautiful in getting in touch with your physical body, with your felt sense, and opening yourself up for deeper connection with yourself and those who are around you. I am thrilled to be supporting you in that.
Well, thank you for that warm welcome into the program, and thank you for really all of your experimentation and study and working with people to really come to this powerful set of practices called biodynamic breathwork. So if you would like to go further with Giten, you're warmly welcome to at biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com. We've kept the investment for this course very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $128, so you save 10% when you pay in full with $349. The course is going to start November 16th and run Thursdays at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern. Even if you can't make that live time, you can still get the full value by participating with the recordings in the community and just staying engaged with the practices. So I encourage you to read through all of the testimonials on the page, people who have just really been blessed and touched and moved and transformed by their work with Giten, and really get a sense for if this is your next step. You've got a great opportunity here to really learn some new tools to help you transform and heal and release all the traumas that might be stored in your cells that might be impeding you moving forward. So again, you can find all the details at biodynamicbreathworkcourse.com. So thank you all. Thank you, Giten, for this beautiful hour together and the practice you shared, and onwards.
Thank you, Stephen.